I'll call this meeting to order. Uh, our MC for this afternoon will be none other than um, Rotarian Angelique. Ms. Angelique, you can take it from here. We will tag team as she goes because she is away and her internet will be in and out. So at this time, we'll have invocation by Rotarian Magdalene. I think you have to unmute your mic.
Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. Sorry about that, Chairperson. Let us reverence ourselves for our Rotary grace. Bless us, O Lord, with these thy gifts. Prosper us in our labor and grant that we may become true and loyal Rotarians, amplifying the object of Rotary in our communities, to our service and to our communities and families. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that wonderful invocation. And at this time, we call on Rotarian Melvin Rotary Toast.
Fellow Rotarians and guests, please raise your glasses in a toast to the Queen and to the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
Queen.
Queen and the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Thank you. So again, I would like to welcome each and every one of you on this afternoon. We have a few guests that are on. We have a guest speaker who is also our island administrator, Mr. Jelen. I'm gonna say hi to the Rotary Group.
A blessing, good afternoon to everyone.
Glad to have you. You also have a role. Role, you can say hi and also said who invited you.
Hi, good night. Was invited by our great secretary. Thank you for having me.
It is indeed a pleasure. And now that you're on this afternoon to this wonderful meeting, I know that you'll be intrigued and we hope to see you again. Right. At this time, I just have a few remarks, update. On Saturday, we'll be doing a cleanup campaign. Saturday from 8 a.m. to 12 noon, located at Spitz Bay Dock. We decided to go into the creek that is in back of the stores. The hope to see all Rotarians, as much of you present. We've teamed up with the Fish Off Committee, Barracuda, and YME. So we're gonna be there for a few hours and we're gonna do some cleanup and help our ecosystem as much as possible. That's all I have for updates at this time. So we'll now call on Rotarian Angelique as secretary report. Is she on? If her internet is acting up, we'll move on. You can easily come back to her when she gets on.
Good evening. Could you hear me?
Oh, we can hear you now.
Yes, apologies. I was having a little issue. And just a reminder for the cleanup again, as our chairman would have mentioned, for Saturday, October 16th, from 8 a.m. to 12 noon, Smith's Bay Dock. Also, we have apologies from Cherie Claire, Almeida Wells, and Rotarian Nikita. And that concludes the report. And then all persons, if you have not received your t-shirts, you can touch bases with Chairman Herman to receive your t-shirts, and the t-shirts will be worn for the cleanup on Saturday. That concludes my report.
Awesome, wonderful. Yes, I think everyone should have their shirts at this time, exception of Rotarian Melvin. As soon as he returns, his will be hand delivered to him. So we'll move on now to our treasury report. Terry and Leticia.
Good evening, everyone.
Evening.
Fellow Rotarians. Very briefly with our treasurer's report, I wish to report that on the 13th of October, we forwarded to the Rotary Club of Nassau a wire transfer in the amount of $450, representing portions of membership dues that were collected. Further, we have a few persons who have a balance remaining. So as far as possible, we are encouraging you to become financial so that you can have your membership fees paid in full. We also have a few persons, I think there are about 4 more persons who have to fulfill their commitment for the paint project. We had pledged $25 per person toward that. And so I am encouraging those persons who have not yet done so to please come forward with that. We also have collected to date $225 for that project. Okay, so that is basically what we have for the report. I don't know if our treasurer, Ms. Walker, is on the call, but I did see another note where the Rotary Club of Nassau has made a pledge. They're seeking to raise about, I think it's about $2,000 toward a project. And as far as possible, persons are asked to make a contribution toward that. And you can let me know when you would, or if you are able to or will be giving a donation, you can just see me and I will make the requisite notation of that. We will also be updating the information in Club Runner. And so based on the email that you would have provided on your registration form, you will receive an email with an update of your individual statement and your contribution toward the club so far. That basically concludes what I have for my treasurer's report today. Thank you very much.
Yes, I am here. I didn't want to interrupt your flow, and I totally agree. And I'm so proud to be partnering with you. I just love the synergy.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Madam Treasurer. Wonderful report. Yes, guys. I heard in the report 1 or 2 of us needs to still live up to the $25 pledge. I think we can try our best to work on that as quick as possible as we can. I think that will help us in moving forward in respects to addressing one of the homes, one out of the 5 homes of endangered person and getting it painted. That funds could be utilized to start purchasing some paint, and we can get the ball going. So remember, we as Rotarian, service above self, eh? So you can make the necessary sacrifice and what needs to be done. And also let's assist our Mother Club, Rotary Club of Nassau, in respect to the donation and trying to accomplish that goal. They already I think have 1,000, and they want all members to try put donation to match that. So it'll be 2,000 total donation that will be given, and it always for a worthy and a good cause. So let's continue to dig deep and continue the good momentum that we're moving forward with. Okay. So at this time, I'll call back on Rotarian Angelique, who is gonna do the introduction, the speaker.
A pleasant good evening again to all. It is indeed a pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for this evening. It is none other than Mr. Dale Jelen, our Family Island Administrator, also my immediate supervisor. So it is indeed an honor. And one of the favorite sayings of Mr. Jelen, life is not predestined. It is simply what we make of it. Mr. Dale Jelen is an avid young Bahamian with a keen passion towards human development, community building, including the protection and advancement of human rights. He was born and raised in Exuma by loving parents who instilled in him a strong moral and spiritual foundation while investing tremendously in his academic pursuits. Presently, he serves as a Family Island Administrator with oversight for the Cat Island District. Dale's educational background includes a MA in Public Administration with a minor in Finance from the University of Michigan, a MA in Jurisprudence from Michigan State University, a BA in Public Administration, and an AA in Law and Criminal Justice from the College of the Bahamas. He also holds certification in anti-money laundering, labor and maritime law, human resources management, and strategic organizational leadership. His hobbies include writing, volleyball, reading, researching, listening to music, and video gaming. Welcome, Mr. Dale Jelen. I will turn the floor over to you, Mr. Jelen.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. A blessed good evening once again to everyone. I'm indeed elated to have been granted the opportunity to speak to the Rotarians of Cat Island during this session that you have tonight. Please permit me to share my screen with you. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I was asked to present on the topic hurricane preparedness, and I decided to take a local and national perspective on hurricane preparedness. And so without further delay, I'll begin my presentation to you. Every year, the archipelagic islands of the Bahamas are vulnerable to impact from severe weather, particularly hurricanes. Thus, guidelines on hurricane preparedness and disaster management are of immense importance. It is crucial that such guidelines effectively address pre-storm preparation as well as post-storm recovery actions. Due to the consequences of global warming, catastrophic hurricanes comparatively to Hurricane Dorian will become more evident. Such hurricanes will cause widespread damage to existing infrastructure and curtail emergency response capabilities. They also have the potential to cripple our economy and every strata of our society. Therefore, it is essential that hurricane preparedness plans clearly outline and articulate critical areas that must be addressed when preparing for a hurricane. Hypothetical scenarios that can manifest in the event of an imminent hurricane must also be factored in during the initial stages of hurricane preparedness. Everyone has a role to play to prepare for a disaster. All employees and organizations, from local businesses to schools, universities, and faith and community-based organizations, are essential components of the community and can help people and groups to become more prepared. The primary objectives of hurricane preparedness on a local and international level is to ensure the safety and protection of residents and visitors, to stabilize incidents or impacts from a hurricane, to mitigate damage and protect life, property, and government assets. It is also to restore business and commerce operations as quickly as possible. Hurricane preparedness on a national level. Hurricane preparedness on a national level entails identifying and assessing the following: hurricane shelter managers and personnel, flood-prone areas, existing water drains, hurricane supply inventory, ground transportation and heavy-duty operation rescue equipment, vulnerable members of the community that will require assistance, emergency operation personnel and support functions, hurricane response capacity, general availability of local resources, for example, food supply, and geographical constraints of each island. Hurricane preparedness on a local level. Unlike tornadoes and earthquakes, hurricanes can be forecast several days ahead of landfall, giving residents time to take precautions. For those in the path of a hurricane, it is best to board up your windows and secure loose items like patio furniture, know where to go in the event of an evacuation and how to get there. Establish an assembly point for each family members to meet if separated, and choose one person who everyone can contact with their whereabouts and status. Take shelter in a sturdy building. Avoid isolated sheds or small structures, open areas, hilltops, the beach, or boats. If you're driving in heavy rain, try to safely exit the road. Stay in the vehicle and turn on the emergency flashes. Never drive in a flooded area. If flood water rise around your car, abandon the car and move to higher ground. Contact your local emergency management agency for information. This is extremely crucial. Avoid contact with electrical equipment, cords, metals, and water. Listen for warning sirens. Stay away from windows and exterior doors, and seek shelter in a basement or bathroom. Stay indoors until authorities tell you it's safe to go outside. Make sure your electricity is turned off to avoid electrocution if water starts to enter your home or dwelling place. While attempting to return to a flooded home to gather belongings, be aware of stepping into a swimming pool or manhole not visible beneath the flood water. This could lead to drowning. Do not wade through water without protective equipment. Flood water can contain enormous amounts of bacteria, oil, hazardous materials, solid waste, and other contaminants that, if ingested, absorb or inhale, can cause illness or death. Local preparation of hurricane shelters. It is essential that during hurricanes preparation at each designated hurricane shelter be expected on a yearly basis and accessed in some of the following areas. The hurricane shelters must be accessed in the area of location. They determine if it's in a safe location, if the location is not in close proximity to the waters, to the sea. As in Cat Island, there are several hurricane shelters with close proximity to the open sea. It must also be assessed in the area of zone to determine if the area is a flood zone or is a non-flood zone. The safety of the hurricane shelter must also be determined along with its capacity. Right now, we are in the COVID-19 dispensation, and so persons who are susceptible to the COVID virus and they may want to shelter inside an emergency hurricane shelter, I'm sure they will be concerned about their safety. And so you want to ensure that when you're looking for a hurricane shelter, that capacity is also assessed. Then the structural integrity of the shelter. Can the shelter withstand winds in excess of 157 miles? As in the case of Dorian, a lot of the hurricane shelters inside Abaco were compromised. The hurricane shelter, you also want to look for kitchen facilities. Are there proper cooking facilities in the shelter, inclusive of running water? Bathroom availability is another point to look at. Also, water storage. Is the hurricane shelter disabled friendly? You must also look at what is, I think, most crucial is the generator capacity of the hurricane shelter. First aid supplies availability, as well as can the hurricane shelter accommodate social distancing. Currently in the Cat Island District, there are 5 available hurricane shelters. There's a hurricane shelter by the name of St. Matthew's Anglican Church in Port Howe. There's Seaview Seventh-day Adventist Church in Dudds. There's Mount Sinai Baptist Church in the Bluff. And there's St. Andrew's Episcopal Anglican Church inside Adderstown. Hurricane inspection was carried out under the auspices of the Department of Social Services in conjunction with several other ministries, including NEMA, whom I represent as the lead agent on Cat Island. So we did some assessment of the hurricane shelters and came up with that determination. We're still waiting to date on a structural engineer to make some additional assessments. And so far we determined that the 5 designated hurricane shelters on Cat Island are suitable to accommodate evacuees or those persons who are seeking to take shelter in the time of a hurricane. The Emergency Operations Center. Significant consideration should be given to the establishment of an EOC when engaging in hurricane preparedness on both the local and national level. The Emergency Operations Center serves a critical function in every phase of emergency management. It is a place of operation where members of the Disaster Consultative Committee mobilize to gather, coordinate, and disseminate information to the general public. Additionally, the EOC provides emergency response functions, organize the evacuation and search and rescue of residents. It is also the main point of communication during and after hurricane. Any existing EOC in the Bahamas usually falls underneath the remit of the National Emergency Management Association agency. Various situations will trigger the EOC opening. Normally during a hurricane, the EOC is activated and all of the various stakeholders are brought into the EOC. And inside the EOC, that is where policy decisions begin to be made. And where those persons' representatives would begin to put plans and preparations together to know exactly how they're going to respond to a hurricane that is pending. The Emergency Operations Center in Cat Island is located in Newbight. It is equipped with a satellite phone, portable hand radio, a standby generator, and a 55 gallon drum of fuel, including a kitchenette and bathroom facilities. There's also a room dedicated for a makeshift emergency clinic and several outlets reserved for charging satellite and portable phones. Who are the persons that work within the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center? Members of the Disaster Consultative Committee are instrumental in the effective operation of the EOC. Members of the Disaster Consultative Committee comprise of representatives from the Department of Environmental Health Services, Urban Renewal Social Services, the Royal Bahamas Police Force, the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, Airport Authority, Ministry of Agriculture and Marine Resources, Local Government, Ministry of Health, Bahamas Christian Council, Cat Island Farmers Association, Bahamas Power and Light, and Bahamas Telecommunication Company. What are the responsibilities of the EOC during a hurricane? The Emergency Operations Center responsibilities during a hurricane threat are as follows. They activate, coordinate, and gather information from various internal and external partners to create a common operating picture and increase situational awareness. They coordinate with disaster management team leaders from each area of operation. Also, the EOC shares information with NEMA inside New Providence in the form of situation reports, and also keep local residents and visitors on the island duly informed. The EOC also monitors weather and current conditions locally. They dispatch response teams when necessary. They obtain information from radar teams regarding the current weather situation and general conditions as a hurricane draws closer to the island and even during the hurricane. They also provide emergency support functions, and they inform emergency respondents of incident locations, conditions, and status of occupants or those persons who would be requiring emergency assistance. Some of the post function of the Emergency Operations Center is to continue to monitor the weather and create conditions. They continue to monitor the weather and created conditions as a result of the hurricane. They process information from response team personnel regarding current on-the-ground situation. They conduct preliminary damage assessment. They prepare and distribute situation reports to NEMA and the national media. They coordinate rapid restoration of critical infrastructure components immediately following the disaster. They carry out also any directive from NEMA and the Disaster Preparedness Agency regarding post-hurricane recovery efforts. And one of the key functions also of the EOC personnel is to account for the well-being of all residents and visitors once the storm is over. In conclusion, hurricane preparedness plays a vital role in ensuring that residents and visitors have access to shelter, know where to go, and know how to keep themselves safe. It also provides an overview and guideline on how to implement and execute pre-preparations, response and coordination during a hurricane, and post-hurricane recovery plans. Cat Island, like all the other islands of the Bahamas, is in desperate need of a modernized hurricane shelter that can withstand powerful hurricanes. The upgrade to critical infrastructure is also essential. Further, providing the necessary financial support to hurricane shelter owners is crucial to the future availability and accessibility of hurricane shelters. In the absence of modernized shelters, hurricane preparedness will do very little in ensuring the safety of residents and the securing of lives. So that concludes my presentation on hurricane preparedness. As you know, the hurricane preparedness is an ongoing effort. Each year, it seems that hurricanes are evolving. So that means that hurricane plans are continually adjusted in order to accommodate changing variables, even based on the climate change and based on the other factors that would cause the hurricane preparedness plan to be altered. The intensity of hurricanes now is increasing exponentially, and it's causing the government itself to consider upgrading our building code inside the Bahamas in order to avoid the loss of life that would happen inside Abaco with Hurricane Dorian. And so if there are any questions, any feedback concerning hurricane preparation in Cat Island, you're free to ask your questions and give your suggestions or recommendations as well.
Good evening again, Administrator Jalen. My question is, as you would have given your presentation, from the being a NEMA representative, is there any future plans, like in terms of upgrading the some of the hurricane shelters, like how you spoke about the water and having the generator of that sort? Like, you know, is there any plans from NEMA to like to upgrade some of the shelters? And also I think you spoke about persons maybe having COVID at the shelters. So does each of the shelters have a separate area allocated in the event for persons, in the event there's some form of evacuation?
Unfortunately, because NEMA relies on the local church operators to use their shelters as hurricane shelters, to some extent, NEMA can only make certain recommendations that are feasible. The recommendation that there be a separate area or room for those who are COVID positive is almost impractical and impossible, because a lot of the hurricane shelters are relatively small. There is no additional room or spacing to accommodate those who would be COVID positive. Now, what can be considered is having a separate shelter for those who are COVID positive to probably be evacuated to in the event of a hurricane. But as it stands, the existing shelters, it is really impractical to try to have the shelter operators create a separate room for those who are COVID positive to be in. Also, in terms of upgrades to the existing hurricane shelters, the government owns no hurricane shelters on any of the islands. That's unfortunate, and I hope that that change in the near future. But as it stands, hurricane shelters are offered based on the courtesy of the pastors and church owners. And if they decide today or tomorrow that they are not going to use their facility as a hurricane shelter, then it means that leaves the government trying to find another hurricane shelter in order to accommodate persons who will need to seek shelter during a hurricane. But hopefully there are plans in the near future for each island to have its own hurricane shelter and government to be less reliant on the churches or schools to use as shelters.
Yes, awesome presentation, Administrator, on some very good information that was shared with us, especially as it relates to us here on the island, this district. The Rotary here, one of the things that we were seeking is to work hand in hand with the disasters committee that you guys have formed here on the island, which you and myself are part of. We have one of our Rotarian, Nikita. She has been designated to spearhead that. So we're looking on ways on how we can fit in and assist, from a Rotary perspective. We are a satellite club, we are small, and we know that resources are limited. But in any which way that we can assist, we would love to be a part of, because like you said in your presentation, these natural disasters, not man-made, natural disaster, it impacts our lives, so in any which way to help bring back some level of normalcy, after going through a tragic storm or flood or something of that sort. We would like to assist. Sorry, Nikita is unable to be in on this meeting tonight, but I want you to point out, I say all that to say that, I want you to point out one or two things. I know you said that, well, we need hurricane shelters, because right now we relied on the various denominations that are here on the island and their buildings. I know you, so definitely shelters is what we need. Anything else that is needed, that needs to be in place, that is not quite in place as yet, and we're still in hurricane season, is not out of the woods as quite as yet.
A proper emergency operation center is also needed here on Cat Island. There is the emergency operation center that we do have now that is being used at the Gilbert's Inn. It puts the NEMA in a very precarious position, because the Gilbert's Inn is a rental. And the event that a hurricane comes, that particular room, that particular area that we have designated at Gilbert's Inn, it may be occupied. And so having an emergency operation center here is crucial, because in the absence of an emergency operation center, there is no main point of contact, and there is no way for those who are part of the disaster consultative committee to get together and to put their heads together and come up with proposed plans and how to properly address the pending hurricane. As we know, the administrator's office and the police stations are in very close proximity to the waters. Last hurricane that was here inside Cat Island, the administrative office and the police station were flooded. And certainly the administrative office out in the Artist Town, that cannot be used because of its close proximity, likewise to the waters, to the sea. And so having an established emergency operations center is crucial. There must be some place built on Cat Island, not rented at the courtesy or the mercy of someone. It must be a government-owned establishment.
Okay.
If I may, Administrator
Yes, sir.
Melvin Seymour, having the expertise and access to the agencies of the government that you mentioned as part of the EOC, or the consultative committee, am I right? As environmental health, social services, you name them. What are they a part of? The Disaster Consultative Committee?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What have they come up with in terms of recommendations? Because let's assume that they were meeting now for some time. In your term, it's just been, what, a year or some. But any recommendations that they come up with, bearing in mind that the government do not own any centers, disaster shelters in any of the islands, and we partner, we meaning at one time I used to be in the system, we partnered with organizations within the community, respective communities, to assist in doing so. But any recommendations came forward to you or any other administrator, if you can remember, about what we should do, because we live on the coast. We all know that the government don't own any buildings in the interior. So where is the best place for that to be constructed? And if not, what can we do with? And I'm just continuing my question and comments. What can we do to partner with the Adventist Church? They're on a hill in out of Dumfries. You know where I'm talking about. And then they are building now in the back of the school in Old Bight. How can we sit with them? We meaning the people, and you being the government's head, on Cat Island, to speak clearly to just what we're talking about now, so that they can, the new building that is going up now, I'm told it's a huge building, not the chapel side or in the Anglican Church, we say the nave, but you would want a particular part of that can house comfortably 10, 12, 15 persons, okay? Not the 200 that we would have to evacuate, but let's just assume they can do something. And they can retrofit that building right now for that purpose. Now, there are partnerships in the government, The government can partner with any organization to do anything that they wanted to do, but first it has to emanate from someone or a body, and the body in this case is this consultative committee headed by you, I believe, who will say that. Just make the recommendation for what it's worth. But now first you have to make the recommendation after the discussion with the leaders of the Adventist Church, just as an example. You could do the same thing with another church, but the Anglican Church, Roman Catholic Church, and the Adventist Church, to a large degree, I'm watching my language here, please, they are not owned by any owner of a church. If you get where I'm coming from. They're not owned by a person, I'm saying. So they're not owned by me. I don't have a church. The Anglican diocese is run just that way. So the relationship has to be established between the government and the Anglican diocese. The relationship would have to be established between the government and the Roman Catholic Archdiocese. And the relationship would have to be established between the government and the Bahamas Seventh-day Adventist Conference, so to speak. Now, yes, they can go to the Baptist Convention, but each Baptist church, if we understand it clearly, they're run by almost committees themselves, because there's the something convention, there's the Zion something, there's the New Hope something. So we have a bit more of a challenge in dealing with them. Or the Adventist Church, for example, they also have a structure that you can work with. And that's a body that make clear decisions and they live by them. I'm not saying that the Baptist or the Church of God don't have it. I'm just saying that I know of the entities that the government have relationships with right now. One prime example is the relationship that the government is dealing with now with the Children's Home in New Old Bight. The government and the assemblies of brethren has a relationship with the running of that facility in terms of dollars and cents. Okay, so I'll leave it there, and you can do your research. But I'll say to you, check with social services on that. That's a relationship. That's an annual giving. The government has a relationship with the Anglican diocese, with the running of the Elizabeth Estates Home for Children. A financial obligation, and they own the building. Okay, the government has a relationship with the Seventh-day Adventist Church, with the operations of a old folks home in, I forgot the gardens, with the financial obligation and the maintenance of the building. So we might be able to sit and speak clearly to that through a recommendation, similar to what exists now with the taking care of old people and children. That's just a suggestion. It requires some work, because we'll come back again next year and speaking to the same thing. We don't own the churches. The churches don't have the bathroom facilities. They don't have any generator. They don't have all of that. So if we have the opportunity to speak clearly to someone, the Anglican churches are not on hills, eh? The Roman Catholic Church has a facility that they're going to renovate. I'm hearing that from the deacon, that they're going to turn into something else. But I didn't hear a shelter for a hurricane shelter. And they're on a rise there in New Bight. So if we look at what we have in terms of capacity and cap, it's limited as to who we can speak with. But it'd be great if we can open conversation though. And on the top of that, adding to that is the identification of shelter managers. I was in Cat Island at a particular time when there was a threat of a hurricane or some tropical storm. And I was told that the administrator at that time had challenges identifying trained center managers to manage the centers. Many of the other islands, they have volunteers, Red Cross, Friends of Social Services and things like that. Are we going to have the same challenge or challenges in CAT in terms of managing the shelters? Because we don't expect the police to, we don't expect the nurses to, we don't expect the administrator to, we don't expect local government to, but if local government want to assist in doing shelter management, that would be great too. So there are some things that we have to think about if we are really going forward with this. I like the idea of having a shelter. I go to Industrious Hill and I see a big school sitting right there on the side of the road. Now, I don't know whether that is impacted during a hurricane. You know the school I'm talking? Okay, fine.
It is.
South of that would be where the teacher used to live. Is that impacted? Because I'm told that there's a tank, water tank there that can be cleaned and maintained, and
that is also in the flood zone area.
Oh, okay, all right, okay. So I'm trying to help to think of places where we can go other than I was told, usually they do some things over at your residence. Not now. I said I was told they used to do things over at your residence, meaning the center is there. So it disrupts you as the administrator more so
I made that proposition,
okay.
but I am still waiting on some favorable feedback concerning it.
Okay. Because in a case like that, that's a government building already. The administrator, the government can pay rent for an administrator away from there, and which is no issue if they can retrofit that.
Yeah, but one of the key concerns is that you have Patelco's tower adjacent to the residence.
Okay.
And in the event that tower falls,
Yes.
likely that would fall on top of the residence.
Okay.
So it is being suggested that whatever EOC is chosen, it is in a secure and safe area, just in the event there is a powerful hurricane that comes to Cat Island.
Definitely. And that's appreciated. The bluff has some hills, well, most of the settlements, but it's green space, and you would have to, adding to the cost of the construction for building would be the other infrastructure that would be light water, telephone, roads, and all that type of thing. So we have to keep those things in mind as well.
The good thing about it is, the fortunate thing about it is that the government has access to structural and civil engineers and many different engineers who can determine which area is best for hurricane shelter to be constructed in. For now, like I said, the government remains at the mercy of church owners or pastors. And in many cases now, you find in other islands, they said that we are not going to lend the government our building to be used as a shelter any longer. In Cat Island, we had approximately 9 shelters, and we're down to 5.
Okay.
Some of those shelters are under repair, renovations, and they said they would have requested assistance of the former government, but they never got that assistance. And so, therefore, they could not avail their building to be used as a hurricane shelter this year.
Okay. There's a building in the bluff, the old school building in the bluff. I'm just trying to help, by the way. I'm pointing out some things. I'm also a Cat Islander, and I want to know that people are safe. There's an old school house there. Might need new roof and all those type of things. And you could just add to that. So you almost have to build on what you have.
I believe the 5 existing shelters are adequate for now. However, like I said, in the long term, the government will be, I believe, placed in a position where they would have to build shelters on each island. They can no longer be at the mercy of building owners who at their discretion decide, well, we're not going to allow our building to be used as a hurricane shelter. Remember, the government has entered into no formal contractual agreement or lease with those building owners. So those owners really have no legal obligation to allow anyone access to come into their building to be used as a hurricane shelter.
You are right.
Yeah, I think we've had especially the committee has had this convo for quite some time, even during previous island administrators and what's not. And we have to that same conclusion, whereby a hurricane shelter needs to be built moving forward. Stanley Webb, who is a council member, being placed in charge of the Ministry of Works and what's not. He is proposed to build a hurricane shelter, but that is still on the table of negotiation and talking, because we'll have to government have to identify the proper piece of crown land, and then do the partnership in constructing a hurricane shelter, proper hurricane shelter that can withstand these type of hurricane. And right now we know that we are at the stage where these hurricanes are beginning to come really strong, as we can see with Dorian. So it's a healthy and good conversation, but we have to keep it on the table and try to come up with the best possible resolution moving forward. And we always have to think long term as we address the immediate attention that is needed. We still have to think long term down the road.
Mhm.
But, any other questions for our guest speaker? If no one has any question, um, administrator, we know when hurricane comes or our island is threatened by a proposed hurricane, sometimes we have visiting guests, tourists, even winter residents that are on our shores within our district. And right now, even as it stands, we have one air carrier, Western Air, and it only comes Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, three days out of the week. So that's only 3 flights. So there is a challenge as relates to properly and safely getting people evacuated and returned back to their humble abode. What the committee, what we have in place now as relates to the plan in um, um, getting tourists dispatched back home and that sort of stuff. Anything in place as relates to that, working along with air carriers or anything of that sort?
Normally, we would send our recommendations into NEMA to Captain Russell, who would forward it on to the necessary channels. But one of the recommendations would have been that in the event of a catastrophic hurricane, such as a Category 3 or Category 4 hurricane, that emergency flights be sent to Cat Island for those who would want to leave the island and take shelter somewhere else. And I believe that is likely to be done in the event of having a powerful hurricane pass over Cat Island or come in close proximity to Cat Island. But so far, there's been no additional flight services and no agreement with any additional flight services in that event. In the event a hurricane comes and there are visitors who are here and want to leave the island right away to return back home. But that is something that has to be considered going forward, the airlift into Cat Island. I just think that 3 days a week is totally insufficient. Looking at the timing of the flight, it's in the middle of the day. So that means that your morning is gone and sometime Western arrives very late inside the evening, which means your entire day is gone. And so that is something that the government must consider going forward. But recommendations would have been there in the areas where the island is deficient.
Yes, and I say that too because we've had past history. There was some tourists that were staying in the Hawk's Nest, and we were being threatened. We had hurricane warning and what's not, and based on our healthcare system and the level of medication that is provided, they could not get the medications and stuff that they need for persons within their party. So their best solution was trying to get back home, which was in the United States. And there was nothing in place. They had to, the only solution was paying for a charter flight and what's not. And for some reasons, private charters, the price, I don't know if that was the normal price or they just hike it up because of the time, but it was ridiculous and they just couldn't I cannot remember verbatim if we were able to assist somewhat, but um, this was like 2 days trying to get that family sorted out and getting to America so they can be where they get their proper medical supplies and what's not, and escape what was coming to us. But it's really something that we have to look into because we know the level where we at as relates to our healthcare system and
Right.
as relates to proper evacuation with flights and what's not.
Yeah, unfortunately, when it comes to hurricane preparation, a lot of things are lacking. And then the infrastructure here in Cat Island is just not going to cut it. Going into the future, looking at the magnitude that hurricanes are now coming at. I mean, Hurricane Dorian is a prime example. Even some of the best structures in Abaco were not able to withstand the winds in excess of 157 miles per hour. And so definitely many areas that were not given sufficient priority and attention. Going forward, I'm sure that they would be given much more priority and attention. If they aren't, then that place just about all of us in a very precarious position. Because we would be trapped on an island where the hurricane shelters are simply inadequate.
Mhm.
Yes, yes. Any other questions?
Hi, good evening. I have, I guess, a question or to make some sort of comment. I know the infrastructure in Cat Island is already very vulnerable. I'm talking about like the communication lines and the electricity, the poles and stuff that run right along the street. One thing I observe is that we have a lot of tall trees and other things. On a breezy day, if a tree branch brushes into a line, you could have an outage. What sort of, um, I guess, plans are there for ongoing like tree maintenance and clearing of the drains and other things? Whose responsibility is that? Does that fall, under, I don't know, the government or the community? How do we work with things like that? Can I?
A very, very excellent question. I myself would have spoken with the management of BPL, both locally and in New Providence, concerning the trimming of trees. I believe even local government here would have recommended to BPL locally that they can use some of their equipment and machinery in order to do tree trimming. Mr. Gilbert, if I'm correct,
100% correct. We did. That has
BPL,
been turned down.
yes, sir. And so we are waiting on BPL to act. The problem was brought to their attention. The issues and areas were pointed out to them where tree trimming needs to be done. Likewise, if you see on the pole a lot of wires hanging, we would have brought that to their attention and also requested that they begin to do some more maintenance to the wires and poles. And so far, we have not seen any proactive effort on BPL or BTC part. We're going to continue to make the recommendation and apply the pressure where necessary, and hopefully we get some positive results.
Yes, and I would just like to say, from a local government standpoint, and even from Rotary, we would like to take a proactive approach, go there and say we're doing some clearing down of bushes. But it's not just that simple. They are high powered lines, very high voltage going through them. So um you can't you just can't go and try say, well, I mean the intention is good, but you can do more harm to yourself or whoever else I'm gonna put out there to say to do tree trimming. Okay, so you need BPL with the necessary skills and guidelines how to properly remove those bushes away from their lines and what's not. to properly clear them and so forth. And even with their poles, to properly remove of damaged poles and putting up of new structured one. So that's why it's an ongoing battle, trying to get them to complete this needed task. If it's something that we can do, but just go there and do, we would gladly and happily to do so. But BPL, we need them on board, and hopefully in the very near future, they would. But this is such a healthy topic. We're losing track of time. So let me thank you, Administrator Jelen, for that wonderful presentation and all that valuable information that you shared with us. It has brought us a little more knowledgeable and enlightened of being ready and being prepared in the event of a disaster within our lovely island. So once again, thank you. At this
My
time,
pleasure.
Rotarians, we like to do a four-way test quickly. Four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned?
To all concerned,
Will it build goodwill and better friendship?
friendships,
Will it be beneficial to all
beneficial to
concerned?
all concerned.
And most of all,
Most of all,
will it be fun? Awesome, awesome. So we'll also now turn over to Rotarian Melvin, who will give the Rotary toast.
Okay, fellow Rotarians and guests, please raise your glasses with me as we propose a toast to Rotary around the world.
Rotary around the world.
Rotaries around the world,
Movies around.
around the world.
You're muted, President. Chairman Herman, you're muted. Not yet.
Oh, so sorry. As I was saying, sorry. We have our wonderful parking lot. We can continue this wonderful conversation and getting all this valuable information as relates to our district here in Kid Island and what we are doing and what we need to do as relates to disaster preparedness. But officially at this time, I will adjourn this meeting until next week, Thursday. So meeting is adjourned.